Hi, readers. It's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I am doing another Throwback Thursday today. I'm trying to do one a month. I don't know if I've been successful at that, but I'm going to try harder to do that this year. I'm pretty sure I did not do one in January. But hopefully you like Throwback Thursdays. I do. And actually, the one I've chosen for today is one that I would really like to reread at some point this year, at least the first in this series and maybe the second and third. So let's talk about Gail McNeil. Gail McNeil, I stumbled upon by accident when I used to work for the nonprofit that I was involved in as the director, the state director. I was at a Barnes and Noble for a Christmas event where we would wrap gifts for people who were coming in and out of the store and other stores in that strip area. And in exchange for that, they would give us a donation to the nonprofit that I worked for. So it was a all day event for a couple of weekends, and I often had volunteers that would take the table, but I ended up at the table myself. Two things happened as a result of those days. One thing, I found Gil McNeil. Another thing, I bought a Kindle. So there you go. It was an expensive event for me every time. But let's start with Gil McNeil. So the first one I read and got was this one, which is called the Beach Street Knitting Society and Yarn Club. I loved this cover. It was really kind of a combination of cover by set in England and about a woman who's British and her family. So that was kind of what drew me into this first in this series. This came out under this title in 2009. It was actually originally released in 2007 in England, and it was called Divas Don't Knit at that time, but then they re-released it with a new title. This follows Jo Mackenzie, who is a newly widowed woman, mother of two sons, and she leaves the hustle and bustle of London to take over her grand's knitting store after her grand dies. And so she relocates and she gets a fresh start, brings her sons to a new place, and starts to take over this knitting shop. And as I remember, she doesn't know how to knit. That could be untrue, but I feel like that was true. And they have a little group called Stitch and Bitch that meets every week, and they just chat and they trade stories and patterns and probably recipes. And I just remember it being so cozy and so sweet. But of course, as most of these kinds of books are, you know what happens. Joe's going to meet somebody, and is she going to fall in love and have this wonderful relationship or not? That's the question. So this is book one in the series. So then, of course, I had to get book two, which is Needles and Pearls. And I love this cover too. I love a blurred cover. How do you feel about a blurred cover? I'm pretty fond of them. I would like to tell you what this one is about, but I don't want to spoil it necessarily. But I will tell you a little bit more about Gil McNeil. She lives in, at least at this time, lives in Kent, England, has a son, and comes from a long line of champion knitters. This one came out in 2010, and it was also first published in 2008 in Great Britain, and it was then also called Needles and Pearls. So they didn't change the name of this one. But this would be book two in this series if you want to check it out. And the third one is called Knit One, Pearl One. And I read that one. It was published in 2011. And I don't, I think I have a physical copy of this one, but I can't find it. I know that's no surprise to you, but I can't find it in this conglomeration of books. But again, I don't want to tell you too much about book three because it is in the third one in the series. Okay, after I read these first two, I read The Only Boy for Me. I have it on my Nook, but the glare is crazy, so I'm just popping a screenshot of it here. This was actually her debut novel, so I found the other two before I found this one. And I didn't like it as much as I liked the knitting series, but I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. This one is about Annie, who has a career as a freelance producer and is really just kind of has a hectic life and a hectic kind of work. She has a 6-year-old boy, and she's just constantly it's the synopsis of it. I was rereading it today as I was thinking about this. Says that the book turns chaos into poetry. I wouldn't say that was true. I remember feeling a little frazzled when I read this one, and it did feel very chaotic. But some of those books are really good. And of course, she meets a guy, and I won't tell you what happens, but and let me just say, sometimes the things that we think are going to happen in a cozy kind of romance novel don't actually happen. So, let's just be clear about that. You never know. Then there was a sequel to that called In the Wee Small Hours. I did not read that one. In fact, I've never even looked for it, to be quite honest. So, this one, Annie's life is still a little bit disrupted. Her sister is pregnant and she wants one of those water birthing experiences and wants Annie to be her birth partner. Her son, Charlie, has decided he's pagan. And I think the sister's partner is like also going to be joining them in this birthing tank. And I don't know, all kinds of chaos ensues in her life. I might read this one at some point. I just hadn't ever really looked for it, but they're light-hearted, but the ones with Annie are a little more chaotic. This one was fun when I discovered it when I was looking over her backlist. It's called Summer Magic, and she edited a number of short stories written by other authors in England. Britain's favorite authors, including Joanna Trollope, Jilly Cooper, John O'Farrell, Toby Young. Totally Magic raised money for Piggy Bank Kids, which is a charity that supports opportunities for children and young people in Great Britain. So I thought that that was actually quite something, and I might want to get that one to support the charity if it's still intact. I did read A Good Year for the Roses, which was I finished it in 2016, so it had to have been published, okay, 2014. So I was going to say it was a new one. I was really excited that she had a new one, and I was going to kind of read it as it came out. And I did like this one. I gave it 4 stars. So this one is about Molly. She also is newly divorced and she returns to a family property that's a pretty big deal. It's like a historical kind of home in England and has a garden. And I just remember it being very, very expansive. And as I recall, she wanted to turn it, let me just check. As I recall, she wanted to turn it into a bed and breakfast. Yes, she wants to run a bed and breakfast. This I clearly do remember. Around the same time that I was reading A Good Year for the Roses, I had a client in Ireland who ran a bed and breakfast in an older home, an older hall, if you will. And we were coaching around her ability to kind of cope with this and the changes and the ups and downs of this particular thing. So here I am coaching this woman, but also simultaneously reading this book. And so then I let her know that I was reading this book. She got a great kick out of it. She ended up reading it herself, and we compared notes about it once after a session. But that I remember. I did enjoy this one. I think I have it somewhere too, or maybe I borrowed it. I just don't remember. But I feel like some of these have disappeared. So maybe I lent them to people and I didn't get them back. I don't know. I don't lend out a lot of books anymore, just between you and me. I got burned a lot by doing that. But I do clearly remember reading this one and I do know that I liked it. Then there's Stand By Your Man, which was published in 2004. So a lot of these came out around the same time. This one is about a number of women who are raising children and having a bit of chaos and havoc in their lives. This may be the reason I haven't gotten to this one yet, but one of them is an architect and she's putting together a garden in the community. One of them is she has 2 children, a little girl and a little boy, and she's really struggling with, kind of raising the two of them and keeping everything intact, and then finds out that she's pregnant again. And then their other friend, Lola, it says she causes havoc wherever she goes. And so I guess the three of them, plus their children, plus the things that they're kind of trying to do, come together and it's called Stand By Your Man. So there's probably some marital strife going on in that too. Gail McNeil's books are sometimes labeled chick lit, sometimes labeled romance, but they're light. It's kind of a nice month to take look at these, but you could look at these any time of the year. But they're fun. Actually, both of these have discussion guides in them. So if you were to use these as a book club read, they probably would be very fun. If there's enough material here to create a discussion guide, I would say that you probably could have a pretty robust conversation about them too. Like I said, I think I wouldn't mind reading this again, probably maybe in the spring or the summer. It just feels like a good, good read. Christian Science Monitor called it a warmly winning second chance novel, which of course you probably could tell from the blurb about it, but honestly, Gil McNeil is a solid read for me and especially good as a cleanser from my reading fatigue, sometimes from a bigger book or from something that was a little bit heavier. So that is my Throwback Thursday recommendation for this week, Gil McNeil. And if you've read Gil McNeil, do let me know and tell me which ones were your favorites. And if not, and you decide to take a look, I hope you enjoy her. And as always, happy reading. Bye.